Okay. Hello. Well, this is my breakdown of the experience that I created with both Unreal, Kinect, and Touch Designer. In this case, I'm going to be explaining all the concepts one by one, and each of the programs has a little section explaining all the different considerations that I had to take into account in order to bring this into reality. Okay, so this is the first program. As you can see, this is Microsoft Kinect Studio. It has different views, and this is basically a point cloud visualization of a recording that I did at home. Basically, I'm here with my partner testing the tracking for the hands when they're closed. How far can someone be from the Kinect, and also see the behavior when somebody moves or goes behind someone. So basically, this is the testing that I did in order to verify what was possible in the first place, and also understand how these data points are sent to Touch Designer. In this case, the first one, it is these 10 streams of information: depth, infrared information, telemetry data, and of course 2D and 3D views to also visualize the cloud points. So this is very important because these programs allows me to loop the video. I'm actually not recording this right now, but I recorded this some time ago. And this allows me to feed this information to Touch Designer as if I was recording live with the Kinect. So this way I don't have to keep recording all of the time for the same bits. In this case, I'm gonna next move on to the Touch Designer network. So this is the output. As you can see, I'm in this case outputting the infrared channels as long as the silhouette of the people that are being recognized by the Kinect. In this case, I rehearsed some movements with my partner in order for the test to be as useful as possible. In this case, let me show you. In Touch Designer, we have this network in which we have the first Kinect, and the first Kinect, well, it's not like there's many Kinects, but the Kinect Touch Designer has different operators. It has tops, chops, subs. In this case, I'm using chops, which are basically feeding data. Tops are more visual, and subs are more for 3D, and dots are only for data. But in this case, for example, if I disable how many players are available to track at once, you can see that you can go up to 6, or you can just go up to 1. If you go up to 1, let me show you what I mean here. I'm tracking many points, so interactions, relative bone rotation, rotations, world space positions, and if I zoom in, you can see that many of the things that are being tracked are either going in one direction or the other, basically. So I'm going to put it back to 2, and let me show you. So this is the first finalized network for the first person. I haven't finished the second one, but the tracking points that I created in order for debugging, basically, because I had to do a lot of debugging for this project, it needed to be easier for me to see whether the data was being sent, and the actual hand closing was very important for me to test in the first place whether data was being sent or not, and that needed to be first verified inside Touch Designer. So every time one of the circle changes around the hands, that is a confirmation from Touch Designer that the information is being recognized first by the Kinect. And let me show you what I mean by this. So these are select tops, basically. So you select first, okay, this is for player 1. Which information do I want from player 1? I want the tip of the hand and the closing of the hands. So in this case, the closing of the hands is a simple event. It's basically like a Boolean, is false or true, and that is a very easy measure to send. Basically, it's a pretty easy data. that was the first thing that I managed to send, which was just the triggering of Niagara particles in a fixed location, as I mentioned before during my previous progress during the weeks. However, I wanted to send the location, and that has been the greatest pain that I have gone through in the recent in the recent term. So I was actually wanting to send heap data, the ID, and hands along with the hips for a more complex network, but I had a lot of problems. So in this case, I'm going to show you what I did. Basically, I selected from the main player, I selected only the hand parameters, and that left me with a left hand and right hand, basically. Then I selected only the three vectors that I'm interested in, which is X, Y, and Z, Z being the depth. And then I decided to, well, kind of multiply this by 10 in order for the measures to be noticeable inside Unreal. In this case, this is a bunch of selects. Basically, I'm doing here, I'm sending, okay, I'm saying I only want X and Y. I'm not going to care about the depth. I'm just going to use X and Y, and I'm gonna select the X, I'm gonna multiply it, I'm gonna select the Y, I'm gonna multiply it by different amounts. In this case it's the same, but I could modify the multiplication, and that could change also the output in Unreal. So that allows me to modify parameters, and especially the data specifically, in order for it to be visible inside. So this is another one. So this is the left hand, and this is the right hand. As you can see, right and left. And I'm doing the same thing. So the right has the ability to send stuff. So let me show you first how the first event was actually sent. In the previous class, I mentioned that I bought this tool that handles OSC communication, and I managed to understand it a little bit more. So basically, you just need to show the address inside Unreal. This is the actual address that Unreal listens to, and then that it is being sent and connected to the data that you have inside these chops. In this case, I needed to send a vector 2, which is sending 2 different locations and not 3, because I am not using the depth. And I decided to name it like this, so I put this name manually, and I was like, okay, position for player 1 and hand 1, and hand left, sorry. And this is the same, position for player 1 and hand right. So these 2 vectors are being sent, and well, now I'm having here the Kinect network, where I am able to create the visualizations that I did for the debugging, basically. So I'm gonna go over very quickly. So basically, this is the hand tip. I'm kind of selecting the math to merge the hand tip from left and right, and then that becomes a visualization of tops. And the circles basically is a parameter here that changes the width of the outer circle, allowing me to change the border color. And from here on out, I'm gonna be explaining basically only my well, player 1, which is in this case left hand is gonna be always color blue, and right hand of my hand is gonna be red always. So please pay attention to the composite that I did here, which is basically the infrared channel and the player index channel that kind of silhouettes every person. And then you're gonna be paying attention to this background, as I will be explaining how this was done inside Unreal. So I'm gonna go and do this now. You already saw what happens with the Kinect. This is playing several iterations. This is playing in loop, and I'm gonna disable this. So again, please pay attention to the background. I have many things open here, mainly because I was modifying the latest assets, but this is the gist of the experience, so that you kind of understand. So I have two spheres, basically two very simple spheres. And if I press play, let me change a little bit the the point of view. So the spheres are changing based on the location of my hand. So pay attention to my hands. In this case, the recording is going to play again. So let me show you other stuff while it plays again. So I'm going to move this over here so we can see Unreal better. So we have two blueprints inside this very simple map. This is a very simple map I created for this. So this is called map 3. So I'm going to save it. And as you can see, please pay attention to this. So it is moving at the same rate and in the same coordinates as the positions of red and blue. I am thinking in the future to include the position of the other player's hands. And two things are happening here. I know it is quite small, but maybe I can go a little closer. Give me 1 second. Maybe I can go a little closer, but there are two things that are happening here. So pay attention also to these Niagara systems. These are triggered when the hands are closed. So again, the movement is being handled by the movement is being handled by my actual movement in real life. And as you can see, there you go. Basically, so it follows exactly the movement that I am doing with my hands. And the triggering of the Niagara particles is separate from the movement of the spheres. So maybe I can get a little closer. So as you can see, red, there you go. That is the gist of the experience. And I struggle too much to get to this point because of the proprietary way the toolset works, which is in and of itself a very different way of understanding Unreal, because I had to understand servers, constructs, tick, and how the behavior changes depending on how I'm sending the data here. For example, if I were to modify, for example, here one of the parameters, and I would put 0, I would put 10, then the movement is kind of reduced in a very severe way, because the hands don't really have that much movement. So I'm gonna just send it back, and now we're back at 100. So there are two things that are going on here. Basically, this is left and right. So this is going on at the same time, and there are two things that are happening as well. So first, the music, if you noticed, is happening here. I'm gonna actually mute it because I don't want to keep having this over my explanation. So that was also a previous analysis that I did with sound in order to know if the triggering was happening correctly. But let's play this again. So now we have just my voice. So as you can see, I created a Niagara particles that spawn on place, and when the sphere moves, well, then it becomes this kind of drawing exercise, which is ultimately one of the most cool things that I've done in a while. So this was basically my objective at the beginning, kind of controlling particles in real time. And as I mentioned in class before, this was a happy accident because I didn't really plan for this to be all this specific particle system. I didn't arrive easily to create it. It was a pretty substantial undertaking. So let me walk you for the final bit. So this is basically, I'm gonna go full screen for this. So Basically, this is the functionality behind it. This is very simple. So when the event starts, there are receivers that's what Unreal is listening to according to this. So basically, what I mentioned before, this is some addresses that I can manually create, and depending on the event that is being sent, I can just select it. Okay, is it being sent a vector, a boolean, an event, an integer? So I create this and I select, and then it is created. One thing that was kind of hard to understand at first was that I actually needed to, for example, this plugin needs to go to class settings and add a router interface. And this is the hardest thing that I struggled initially, because I really didn't properly understand that you had to implement the interface from the plugin for the specific blueprint that was being affected. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to modify or send information. So as you can see, the receiver and it is paired to another receiver. So two things are being received. The first one is that there is oh sorry, there is a the first in this case Kinect left. So let's open it. So Kinect left, it is a very simple Niagara system, basically a very Minecraft-ish. It creates a simple spawn of particles, and the same for a right. So basically, what I changed is the color again to keep it consistent with the color scheme. Left blue, right red, and this is what's going on. Basically, on the left for the BP Kinect hand left, I'm having the triggering of the event first as an independent Niagara system particle showing up. And then this is the start of the show. Basically, the vector goes in and I separate the vector and I say, okay, for X, I wanted to multiply times -1 and put it in Y, as you all know that Unreal has different coordinates for X, Y, Z. Z happens to be on the y-axis as well, and since I'm not actually fiddling around with depth, I'm not going to go into that. But if I were to, this is how it would look like basically. So the value goes in and the new location is being assigned to the sphere as well. Finally, the thing that wasn't working before, and one of the hardest things to get it working, was actually the functioning tick. So the tick is a pretty particular thing that I actually don't really know how to explain, but my goal for this was to get the position current to the actual information. So it needed to be mirroring the actual movement of the physical tracking of the Kinect. So whenever I put this function here, the ticking one, it doesn't really work. And I'm assuming that the tick, since it works just like any other tick, it kind of overrides the positioning that is happening by seconds. So it doesn't really allow me to see the changes. So this is for left and this is for right, basically the same structure. I had two different reactive systems, and well, pretty much the same, different also for the right, so different Niagara systems as I mentioned before. And these were the examples that I was using to understand, okay, how is data being sent from from this, right? So the let me show you something else. So the reactive one in this case is the blue one as well. And as you can see, this is a pretty cool particle emitter. In this case, I'm having a sprite and a mass rendering going on at the same time. The thing that makes it the most interesting is the Coronary forces along with the drag, because otherwise that would be just too crazy. It is solving for velocity, and the color, it is here that I'm changing it manually. Finally, for the red part of the particle systems, I'm doing exactly the same. So I'm doing this, and the coral noise, the drag, basically it goes on, and if I were to modify this, that would change a lot. I have more particle systems, so Niagara systems, sorry, here it is. So I had created similar ones that were more experimental and arguably more visual. But since I ended up going with an interaction that is primarily focused on letting the viewer see the changes live, these kind of independent particle systems don't really adjust very well to the nature of the information that is being sent. So as you can see, I'm gonna show it one last time here. The particle systems are, I'm gonna start. Okay. There you go. So they are independently being controlled by the particles that are connected to the spheres. So I'm basically just moving the sphere, and since inside the blueprint the particle system is connected to the initial location in which the sphere is being spawned at, then well, it is very easy for the system to just follow the tracking of the hands. As you can see, when it also jitters around, but the position is being tracked. And that was the goal initially of my project, so I'm very happy with it. Um, I arguably spent too much time on this, having it function. Like it was kind of simple, but as I mentioned during the classes, the proprietary nature of the prototype and how I needed to structure the data myself here before actually sending it was the hardest. Actually, it was the really hard things. So this is my partner again. We were happy about this result as well. So yes, this is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for so much for the learnings. And although the blueprints are somewhat simple, I had like different examples, and I play with particles, with materials, different maps, and I was also kind to get it to a much more complex point in everything. But for now, I'm pretty happy with the result, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more. And yeah, this is my project in Unreal Engine 5 for this second term of the Master of Digital Media. So thank you so much for watching, and yes, I'll leave you with this simple visualization of this, and well, probably I'm gonna uh, revisit the video by creating the particles for the player 2, and also trying to spawn the particles at the moment when the hands are being closed. That was the goal that I had as well, and interpolating the signals as well. So um, I appreciate you so much for everything, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with the result. Thank you so much.